In this video, I'm going to show you how to apply for academic consideration in SOLS. Before you apply, make sure to check if your circumstances are eligible and that you'll be able to provide the required supporting documentation. Linked below will be articles listing eligible circumstances and supporting documentation requirements. You should apply for academic consideration as soon as possible after the event occurs. You need to apply no later than the due date of the assessment task or the day before if you're choosing a self-certified application, which will be explained later in this video. You will apply and submit documentation in SOLS. To start, log into your SOLS account. You can do this via the current student's homepage. Once you've accessed SOLS, select Academic Consideration, which is located on the left-hand navigation menu under Current Session. Next, you'll come to the Academic Consideration Existing Application page. Here, you'll be able to view your previous academic consideration submissions. To apply, click the Create a New Application button at the top of the page. You'll be taken to the Academic Consideration New Application page. Here, you'll find information about what academic consideration is, wellbeing support, reasonable adjustments, and more. You'll need to fill out parts A to D with the correct and relevant information concerning your academic consideration application. Part A, Subjects for Academic Consideration, requires you to specify the dates you're affected, as well as the subject and assessments you're asking to be considered for. If you're unsure about subject or assessment information, you can check your subject outline, which will be available on your subject Moodle site. If you're applying for more than one subject or more than one assessment, you can add more in the same application by clicking Add Another Record. Part B, Grounds for Academic Consideration, requires you to select what circumstance you have been affected by choosing the most appropriate options from the drop-down fields. You won't need to go into any additional detail about your circumstances other than providing supporting documentation in the next section. Part C, Supporting Documentation, requires you to submit evidence to support your chosen grounds for academic consideration. Depending on what circumstances you've been affected by will depend on the documentation you have to provide. There are 3 options for submitting supporting documentation. They are 1, providing documentation at the time of submitting the application. 2, provide the documentation within 3 working days of the assessable item due date. 3, supporting documentation not required, first application in session for written assessment, extension not exceeding 3 days. In this video, I'll explain all 3 types and how to submit them. The first option, I will provide documentation now, requires you to upload one of the following document types: medical certificate / letter from a registered medical practitioner or psychologist, supporting documentary evidence for non-medical grounds, which could include a range of other document types, statutory declaration with secondary supporting documentary evidence. The circumstances you selected in Part B will dictate which document type you need to submit. If you upload a document which is not an approved type of evidence for your circumstance, your application is likely to be declined. So remember to check the approved document types. Once you've selected the document type, ensure you upload the correct file type and fill out the relevant information below. Once you've completed all fields and clicked Upload, you can move on to Part D. The second option is I will provide documentation within 3 working days of the assessable item due date. You can choose this option if you're waiting on documentation. Choosing this option will allow you to come back and attach the document later. Please note, documentation must be provided no later than 3 days after the due date of the task. If you do not provide documentation, this can result in your application being denied. The third option is supporting documentation not required. First application in session for written assessment, extension not exceeding 3 days. You can only choose this option if you meet all of the following criteria. If you are seeking an extension of time to submit an assessment task, and your assessment task is an individual written assessment, not group work. You are requesting an extension of no more than 3 days. This is your first application in the session, and you are applying at least 1 day before the due date. Please note, if you choose this option and you don't meet all of these criteria, your application will be denied and you will need to resubmit with supporting documentation. For Part D declaration, you will need to read and select I agree to submit your application. Once you've submitted your academic consideration application, you should expect to receive an outcome within 3 to 5 working days. The outcome to your application will be sent to your SOLS mail. You should continue with your studies and working on any assessments while waiting for your outcome. If you have any issues with your application, please contact the AskUOW team.